This exhibit was created by the Buffalo Bill Center of the West in Cody, and it was there all summer. And they, starting about, I think in 2012, commissioned two photographers, Michael Berman and William Sutton, to go out and photograph the grasslands of Wyoming. So 2012, 2013, 2014, they went out on different field expeditions and took all these photos. They took 50,000 or over 50,000 total photos, and these are the 82 ones that they chose to represent all their trips. And I think clearly part of what they chose were the ones that had interesting things in terms of topography or patterns, or the ways that the land was being used, because you don't want to just have 82 photos of grass. Like, you know, this is great, but you can't just have that for every single shot. So it's also really interesting and proves the point that a lot of these are places that many of us just sort of drive through as you get to somewhere else. But once you stop and get out of your car and walk around for a little bit, you notice just how diverse these grasslands really are. So it's not just all flat, you know, fields of grass. There's all this other stuff that's going on out there. And I was just saying, we went to Thermopolis about a month ago and did some of that stuff where we stopped and got out and walked around. And it's just really amazing what you see when you're walking around and not in your car. So this exhibit also wanted to show you views that were not what we typically associate with Wyoming. So it isn't, you know, grizzly bears or wolves or elk or deer. It's this, you know, land that once was great habitat for all those creatures. And it's not also the Tetons or Yellowstone or Devil's Tower. It's all this other stuff that we have in the state that is, again, something that you might consider driving through, but that is really interesting in and of itself. It has, especially in the book, really an historic way of thinking about these lands. These were really prime areas for bison and pronghorn, and this diverse ecosystem that we used to have that was part of the Great Plains. So that's one of the reasons why in the other galleries we did Monarchs of the Plains, which was to show another artistic vision of this area and of all the animals that still live in many of these places, but that certainly thrived in much greater numbers on these lands before Europeans came across and killed almost all of them. Another really important thing about this exhibit is that most of the photos show something about our relationship and use of the land. So there are some like that, and that's fairly timeless, and you could say there's nothing about humanity's impact on the land there. But lots of these other ones have something that we have done to the land. There isn't, and this panel right here explains that there aren't a lot of grasslands in Wyoming that remain unaffected by human presence. Most of what's out there has been in some way impacted by human hands. And so that's a pretty amazing thing to think about in and of itself. Anyway, when you're out there looking around through the grasslands, you pick up on things that are different or patterns in the landscape. And so this is interesting. This is called bed, and this is maybe where a deer or a cow fell asleep and made a bed. And then this is just a nice little, it's called Chicken Creek, so there's maybe a creek right there. I thought of it as maybe a little trail through the grass. Anyway, these are the things you notice as you're walking through these landscapes, the little anomalies, and different things to look at. So there's one, and I always forget where it is, there's at least one photo in here of one photographer taking a picture of the other photographer. So that's kind of fun to see. I think it's down there somewhere. And it's really hard to spot. But again, when you're out there doing landscape photography, you're looking for different cool patterns. So there's that nice circular pattern. Just some beautiful shots of wonderful little valleys, green valleys. There's a dead horse. And even in this, which might look pretty, unimpacted, there's these trails from livestock. There's a fence right there. So it's really about what we've done to the land. This is one of my favorite ones, which is Oxbow Fence, which just shows you how we subdivide the land without really much regard for the natural patterns of the landscape or what nature wants to do. So this is a huge oxbow in a river, and then there's our straight line fence that goes right through the middle of it. And so that's just a really good example of us putting these little boxes on a landscape that's not in any way shaped to conform to that. There are kind of different sections in here. Clouds and storms, different patterns of grass. This is another great example of our impact on the land. You put up these fences, you divide the land into different areas, you let your cattle graze over here, and so this area is brown and grazed down. Keep them off of here and the grass grows back, and then of course you rotate them over and they have that grass to eat later on. There's the power plant way back there in that one. This is a little cattle section. There's beautiful shots of roads and beautiful shots like this, which give you an expansive sense of the landscape. These kind of things, to me, are always like the most appealing, because they're like a beautiful little Edenic valley.
Kind of reminds me of the English pastoral landscapes of the 19th century.
Yep. That makes you think of this as a beautiful place on which you should cultivate your fields and raise your livestock. This is one of the only ones, it may be the only one in Teton County. There aren't, we have grasslands like the elk refuge, but we're sort of a level in elevation above where much of the photos in this exhibit were taken. But this is a cut bank on Mormon Row, and we don't know quite where it was taken, but it shows just how deep the roots are of these grasslands, or these grasses. And so there's a couple of good interpretive panels just about how the open plains are good habitat for grasses and why grass grows there naturally and thrives, whereas it's not great for trees or forests because of the wind and the instability of the landscape. This talks a little bit about what we said in the beginning, what it used to be, such great habitat and land for bison, pronghorn, elk, prairie dogs, etc., that whole ecosystem. So I think they really want you in this exhibit to think about how it is now, think about how it was, and then think about how it could be in the future. There's, again, talking about different patterns in the landscape. This over here is really interesting juxtaposition of a human, what's like a wreck of a car, and just that the photographer was obviously interested in the pattern of this, and then the pattern of this skinned deer. Also, this series of skeletons that may be some cattle that got frozen in a snowbank or something. It's odd that there's that many in that configuration in one place. It'll be interesting maybe to ask them about that. The two photographers are going to come in January to talk. I think they'll talk at Mixed Media, or they'll be here for Mixed Media. Again, like roads and fences are really interesting because they're something diverse on the landscape. So this is just classic with a tumbleweed like stuck on every single fence post as it goes down. Makes you think of how windy it is out there. And also, I love this one because those are the tracks of the road, and the snow has blown across, this way, and gotten caught in the tracks and left that nice pattern on the prairie. So there's obviously nice things like this, just grass. There's some interesting paintings that they found of animals that used to live on the prairie, like that bison. That might be pointing you to a bison preserve. And then this one of cattle on the landscape. Those trees look like alien creatures to me.
Yeah, they're walking.
Dancing.
So there's a nice book that goes with this exhibit. That's usually up here. It's also available in the gift shop. Really nice essays and then great prints of all these. That's another really funny photo. Thompson Creek? Yeah. Just that there's this road sign out in the middle of this pasture with the cattle walking around it is sort of ridiculous. So then, yeah, there's back here some biographies of the photographers, different places where they took these photos, the different counties that they went to, and then some in green are conservation areas or grasslands. We have one national grassland in the state, which is Thunder Basin or something like that, and it's this one right here. But in general, you associate these areas with the eastern part of the state as it goes into the Great Plains. And less over here, but you can see there's certainly some photos that were taken on this side of the state. So that is kind of it for the photography portion. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. So again, what's fun to talk about if you're leading a group through is the history of the grasslands and connect it to the exhibit that we put up over there. But also just what were the photographers looking for or at when they were out there in these spaces? And why did they pick these photos to represent the 50,000 images that they took? And then the education department has put together a really nice interpretive piece back here. And these were grasses that were collected, come on back, on our property. Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong. This summer, and then dried, and then sandwiched in plexiglass, so that if there were any bugs, they wouldn't get out. And so these are all different kinds of grasses and plants that you can find around here, and then divided into whether they're native, non-native, or invasive. And so native, obviously, have been here and weren't introduced. Non-native are plants that maybe have been introduced but aren't really detrimental to the ecosystem. And then invasive, which are these ones marked in red, are the ones that really you don't want in this ecosystem because it pushes out the native and the non-native ones that you do want. So there's a couple invasive species. The cheatgrass is a huge, huge problem on our hill in particular. And then the other one over here is this hound's tongue. And these would be interspersed on our property with all the other things.
It's really well done, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's just fun to see these close-ups.
Invasive species.
Yep. Crested.
And all of these ones on this side.
These are all from our hillside, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, and there's many more too. This is just like a selection of what's growing out there.
you don't think about that diversity just in this one little area.
Did you mention the photographers would be here?
Yeah, there'll be there's tentatively scheduled a volunteer training for January 14th at our usual time, but I'll send you all a schedule of trainings next year soon.
And this exhibit will be here through April, I think, so it'll be up for a long time.
Nice.
All the way through the season. There's a great video that you should watch that has the two photographers speaking about this project. And I probably said a lot of what they have said, but it's great to hear it in their own
Is that in the
words.
theater around?
No, it's right here on the...
It's on the iPad on the wall right outside the
Oh,
closet.
right.
Yeah.
What's the percentage of grasslands in the state? I mean, I know wetlands is 2%, so.
Oh, I have no idea.
Ooh, that's a good question.
It might say on one of these things.
No, it's double.
Yeah.
And Crazy Woman Creek,
This just has, well,
that's in Johnson County, I don't know anything about Crazy Woman. It's one of the big cities.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the video's over here. And then,
So did they take any pictures in Yellowstone?
nope. Although there's some nice grasslands in Yellowstone.
Yeah, that's what was just crossed my mind.
Yep. So the video is definitely worth watching, and yeah, and feel free to ask me any questions now or after. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you on Friday at our fun potluck Thanksgiving turkey dinner lunch.